was a nun who worked in a prison. And she had this idea that she'd offer any of the prisoners who were interested the opportunity to send a free card to their moms for Mother's Day. The interest was so high that she ran out of cards and ended up asking Hallmark for a donation to try to meet the demand that the prisoners had. When Father's Day was approaching, she had the idea that she'd try to get ahead of it this time. So she ordered stacks of Father's Day cards to offer to the prisoners when the time came that they could send to their fathers. When the warden let the prisoners know about this offer, there were 0 requests for Father's Day cards. Masculinity can be toxic when men's strength is used to take life or when it's set aside in favor of neglect. And yet what the Bible tells us is that masculinity is a part of showing the world God's story of who he is and how he wants to be in relationship with people. Pretty early on in the Bible, in fact, just in the 2nd chapter of the Bible, we see a job description for the first man. It says that God placed that first man, Adam, in the garden in order to work it and to guard it. I have a garden in the back of my house, and it's pretty small. So I decided that this year I would relieve my wife of all the garden duties and I would take care of it this year. And I've been surprised by how much work it is. I have to show up every day to pull weeds, to water it, to kill any pests that are trying to eat my plants. I have to pick the vegetables at the right time. I have to clean the vegetables, and then I have to cook the vegetables for my family before they go bad. It's a lot of work, and yet the goal is simple: to cultivate life. The first man was placed in the garden to work the garden in order to cultivate life, and that same job description is for all men today. God placed the man in the garden in order to work it and to guard it. Thousands of years ago, when the Israelites were wandering through the desert, they followed God's instructions and built what was called the tabernacle. Now, the tabernacle was this place that was set up so that people could draw close into the presence of God. A group of these Israelites, called the Levites, they had the role to stand guard in front of the tabernacle, sometimes even armed with swords or spears, in order to keep people from trampling on the special place, in order to keep people from entering into the presence of God in an unworthy manner. Adam was placed in the garden in order to work it and to guard it. God designed masculinity involves cultivating life, guarding God's creation, including people, from being trampled, and creating space for people to enter into the presence of God. With this definition of masculinity, Jesus is the manliest man that's ever lived. He cultivated life. He would tell people who were tired to come to him, to trust in his leadership, that his leadership was light. It was not a heavy burden. He would tell people that he would produce life in them in the same way that a vine produces life in a branch, as long as that branch stays connected to the vine. Jesus was inviting people to stay connected to him and to find life, cultivated life through that relationship. And he also was a fierce guard. That tabernacle that I mentioned just a little bit ago eventually became a temple. And one day Jesus was walking by this temple and he saw row after row of people trying to make a profit off of people who were just trying to be in the presence of God. And the Bible says that he became so zealous that he made a whip out of some cords, and he came and drove those money lenders, those people trying to sell things, out of the temple courts. He turned over their tables, scattered their coins. He was a fierce guard of people's opportunity to be in the presence of God. Men are designed to use the strength that God has given them in order to cultivate life, to guard God's creation, including people, and to create an atmosphere for people to enter into the presence of God. And they're meant to do that under the leadership of God. Will you follow the lead of Jesus in defining your masculinity? There's nothing toxic about Jesus' masculinity, and he has a lot to teach us about ours.